Delta is rapidly strengthening in the Caribbean. Good Monday evening, I'm Mike Naso with the latest on the tropics. You can see out there we do have our two systems. We have Gamma in the Gulf of Mexico. It's a weakening depression. It's forecast to become a remnant low. We're not going to discuss it. The main threat that we're going to focus on is this system, Tropical Storm Delta, which is almost a hurricane. In fact, by the time you see this update, it might already be one. Here's the latest as of 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time from the National Hurricane Center. Delta was at 16.2 north, 79.4 west, winds of 70, but again, that's estimated right now. The Air Force and the recon's flying out there. It could be a hurricane as you see this update around 6 p.m. or so. It is moving west at 8 miles per hour. The pressure, 983 millibars. We just had a report from the aircraft down to 978. At 11 o'clock last night when I did the update, it was 1,006. It has dropped over 20 millibars in less than 24 hours, a very rapid rate of strengthening. You can see the forecast track has shifted west. It is forecast to become a dangerous major hurricane by Wednesday morning and be very close to or even making landfall over the Yucatan Peninsula and then move into the Gulf by Thursday. And then as it feels the tug from a trough over the southern U.S., make a turn. Now here's the critical feature. Does it turn quicker and further to the right towards the Florida Panhandle? Does it turn more gradually towards the upper Texas coast and the Laura-ravaged areas of Louisiana? We just don't know, but anybody along the North Gulf Coast needs to be ready for at least a Category 2 hurricane, a very powerful storm. I did want to go over the hurricane warnings. We have a hurricane warning in effect for the Cuban province of Pinar del Rio, and we now have a hurricane warning from Tulum to Rio Lagartos, Mexico, including the island of Cozumel, with the expectation that hurricane winds could clip the Yucatan or even go right over. Same with western Cuba. We also have a hurricane watch out there for the Isle of Youth in western Cuba, and tropical storm warnings for the Isle of Youth, as well as the Cayman Islands, including Little Cayman and Cayman Brac. Now, you can see the center has moved further south, but that's not really because of any feature in the upper atmosphere as much as the center wrapping around the deep convection. However, we should eventually see that motion off towards the northwest, towards the Yucatan Peninsula. Here's the visible satellite imagery of Delta as the sun starts to set. Notice the eye right in there. You see that developing eye? Once it gets that tight inner core, it is going to go very quickly from a tropical storm borderline Category 1 hurricane into a much more serious hurricane, and that's why we have those hurricane warnings in effect. You can see the south coast of Jamaica up here not dealing with anything except some residual rain bands, as the worst winds are definitely within that circle I just drew right there. The ship's model intensity guidance is off the charts. The ship's probability for rapid intensification is up to 95%. 87%. These are some ridiculous totals, which means that the likelihood of a rapidly deepening hurricane is high. You can see the hurricane model, the HMON, brings Delta to a very powerful Category 2 or 3 hurricane right offshore southeastern Louisiana, and then has it coming ashore there right over areas like Triumph and Slidell and the Mississippi coastline. That would be very, very nasty. We have the H-Worth model, which brings it to a strong hurricane, but then weakens it dramatically to a very weak tropical storm. That would be great news. However, that could just be one random run of the model. We don't know for sure if it's going to stick with that. But again, that would be on Friday. The European model finally, after ignoring Delta, has latched on, shows Delta as a strong hurricane on Thursday, and then you can see brings it right on up further west towards the areas of western Louisiana, which, as you know, were ravaged by Hurricane Laura in late August. They do not need anything, let alone another strong hurricane. So the question is, how strong will Delta get, and how strong will Delta be at landfall? Well, these water temperatures, after our storms like Beta and Sally, they've really cooled off. And with those cold fronts that draped down across the southern U.S., they're not as hot as they were, say, 2 years ago for Hurricane Michael. However, they're still warm enough to support a hurricane, and we don't want it to become a strong hurricane down here where the waters are boiling and build up a storm surge, because even if it weakens, it could push that water on shore and have high waves. So we're going to watch this very carefully, but we do think that there will be some wind shear and cooler waters as it approaches the Gulf Coast. But again, we don't know where it's going to be and how strong it will be at that point. A lot of time to watch it, a lot of variables. The upper level wind shear, you can see what's left of gamma is right in here where I put that X. It's getting shredded, but you can see this very low green wind shear right over the top of our tropical storm Delta. Very favorable. Look at these blues and these dark colors compared to on the North Gulf Coast. You can see that's very high wind shear. So this is the high wind shear, and this is the low wind shear, and right now Delta is under a very, very favorable environment for strengthening. Now, a hurricane I mentioned yesterday that's a little bit similar is Hurricane Lily from back in '02. It was a tropical storm. It became a Category 2 hurricane, went over western Cuba, peaked as a Category 4, and then literally in the final hours before landfall, weakened from a 4 to a 3 to a 2 to a 1. It was barely a minimal hurricane coming ashore in Louisiana just hours after being a Category 4. So weakening upon landfall, rapid weakening is possible, and that's what we always hope for. We'll see if Delta does that later on, but we don't know at this point. The key messages as of 5 p.m., and again, by the time you see this update, Delta might already be a hurricane. Number 1, dangerous storm surge and hurricane conditions expected for the northern Yucatan Peninsula and extreme western Cuba beginning tomorrow night, Tuesday night, and we have a hurricane warning in effect. Number 2, heavy rainfall, Jamaica, the Cayman Islands, western Cuba, the Yucatan. That could always give the rise of flash flooding and mudslides. Number 3, tropical storm conditions for the Cayman Islands tonight. It's getting close, and we have the tropical storm warning in effect. And finally, number 4, Delta is forecast to approach the North Gulf Coast of the United States late this week as a hurricane. While there is large uncertainty in the track and intensity, there is an increasing risk of dangerous surge, wind, rainfall, anywhere from Louisiana to the Florida Panhandle, beginning Thursday night into Friday, and obviously residents in these areas should ensure that they have their hurricane plan in place and monitor the progress of Delta. Again, I'm Mike Naso with the latest. We're going to continue to watch this rapidly strengthening storm, looking at that visible satellite imagery, the thunderstorms blowing up there on the right side of the eye. It is forecast to become a hurricane and then a powerful hurricane and make that move up towards the Gulf of Mexico. All eyes on Delta tonight, and I'll continue to keep you updated. I'll talk to you guys later.